This is Spoilerin time, folks. Welcome. If you know our show, Cordkillers, you know we do a lot of work there trying to figure out how to watch things, where to watch them, what to watch, and all of that. This is the show where we get to talk about the stuff we have watched. We are going to talk about All Quiet on the Western Front, an Oscar nominee from Netflix. We're going to talk about episodes 12 and 13 of 2521 and episode 4 of The Last of Us. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
And we're joined from one-upsmanship's own Adam Ganser. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam.
Yes, thanks for having me. I was so pumped to talk about this.
I didn't know if you were. You were a bit reluctant, which tells me we Tom, where shall we begin?
Oh, we will begin with The Last of Us, season 1, episode 4. This episode is Joel and Ellie showing up in Kansas City, Missouri. I think it's Missouri based on the road signs. Could be Kansas City, Kansas, but it's Kansas City nonetheless. And they are now stuck in Kansas City. The truck gets wrecked. They get attacked. Ellie shoots somebody. Then Joel finishes them off, and then they're on the run the rest of the episode, trying to hide away from the good citizens of Kansas City who want to kill them.
So, Adam, you and I have the curse of knowledge, having played The Last of Us, the first game. If you don't mind, I would love for Tom to tell us what it's like not having played the game to experience this.
Oh, yeah, please.
Well, okay, so that has been my shtick on all these episodes, and this particular episode didn't feel particularly video gamey and until they were like trying to dive into the hole that when they're getting shot at first, but most of the time it just felt like a story. Felt a little slower than some of the other episodes. I think that was because they were stuck in one location for most of the time.
Can I share something? This has been far and away the most video gamey. If you've played the video game, like
interesting,
the moment when Joel is being choked, and my daughter, 15 years old, Josie, just says, press X, keep pressing X, because that's what you do in that struggle.
Yeah, that sequence did strike me as video gaming, but the rest of it too, like the running around,
as a matter of fact, the driving down the road, coming upon the barricade, deciding to go around, that's a video game trope that says you shall not pass here. They even do, I believe, the first time that we've seen one of the core mechanics in the game is lifting one person up to get in, and then they go inside, and then they let you out. There are certain places that Ellie can fit that Joel can't fit. Right. That's kind of wonderful to me that to you it didn't read as video gamey. And in fact, the dialogue when she finds essentially the Playgirl magazine is I believe quite possibly word for word from the video.
It's pretty close.
Of the script is word for word.
Pretty close. Yeah.
But yeah, this episode, interestingly, now that you've told me that, felt slower to me. And I wonder if there's some underlying mechanism of, because I didn't have to do anything, maybe that came through. I don't know.
This was a shorter episode, and as somebody who has enjoyed a disclosure, I'm a fan of everything I've seen so far. I'm a fan of the parts that have stayed true to the game. I'm a fan of the parts where they've enhanced things I saw in the game.
The game was Pittsburgh, not Kansas City. Is that right?
Correct. This is basically that story.
But that's not. If anybody was like upset that it wasn't in Pittsburgh, I'd be like, why do you care?
That's a silly thing.
Yeah.
The only difference it made to me was when I saw that road sign, I was like, oh, 35. They must be in Kansas City.
Well,
and Wichita, Des Moines. I was like, oh, I know where they are.
At least they got the road signs correct. In the first episode, as a resident of Austin, there was some beef I had with some of the road signs. So that's neither here nor there. But as somebody who liked it, I felt like this was a light snack. And only at the end, having played the video game, did I realize, oh, I bet that next episode is going to be a plus-sized episode where we're going to get what I know from the video game to happen. Before I toss to Adam and his scroll of grievances, is there anything else, Tom, you wanted to say about this particular episode?
No, I really thought it was interesting that they picked Kansas City because they were shooting in Alberta, and they could make it look more like Kansas City than they could Pittsburgh, apparently, because it's more wide open and
that's
similar.
Interesting.
I thought the girl from Yellow Jackets being in charge of the people was interesting casting because of the same reason she's so good in Yellow Jackets, where she just looks like a sweet mom, and so when but she can act as an actor like a hard ass. I thought that was great casting, and I enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. And the parallels to some Walking Dead stuff kind of struck me here and there.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
And there's a lot of overlap, and there's no way to not see the similarities. But a quick trivia note: I read somewhere, not fact checked, but Brian Memory, her lieutenant, the second in command, the guy with the salt and pepper beard, badass looking guy, is the mocap and voice of Tommy in the video game.
That's correct.
I heard that too. Yeah.
Oh, I thought Tommy was being played by Tommy.
No,
okay, so I got that wrong. Okay,
this was in the after the episode thing when they mentioned that.
Oh, did they? Okay, they did go back and reshoot more scenes with Tommy for the pilot on this. Yeah, because they wanted to strengthen that. But okay, Adam.
Yeah,
you liked the video game. And
I love the video game. I absolutely love it.
There are two reasons that when video games try to get translated into movies or TV that people complain. It's either not enough like usually it's not enough like the original video game, or it deviates from it. Which of those two things is irking you right now?
I think I get it sort of falls into the first category, but I just want to be clear. I don't want the TV show to just be the video game. In fact, like every time they've taken a big swing, I think it's been good. Like, I think the previous episode was a very different version of Bill, and I think it actually managed to cut to what it is about The Last of Us that we all love. And so that was good. They're taking a lot of small swings to kind of mirror the video game, and that's where I start to be like just concerned. Not like it's bad. I think it's good, but just like I have some concerns, and I don't want to spoil things because I know a lot of us don't know where the story goes, but my biggest concern is I think that they're not letting Joel kill enough. He needs to kill more. And the reason that I think that is that ultimately this is the journey of a man who's so hardened that he doesn't know or doesn't want to know what it is to care about anyone again. And I don't know if that's totally coming through, as I watch it. Like, for instance, I think Pedro Pascal is actually a very warm person. Like, when I watch him on screen, I find him to be likable and engaging and charming.
Which Joel was not at first in the game.
Exactly.
He was broken.
Well, Joel was never that at any point. Joel softens over the course of the series for reasons. But that's part of what makes it such a magnificent story, is that you wouldn't think this guy can find a way back.
So
like it seems impossible.
One of the topics that came up in the first time I appeared on your podcast, One-Upsmanship, was the discussion about whether or not art can exist in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And as a magician, I have no problem with believing that art is of the moment and in the context, and there's always two parties for that. And given that that's my position, you can't tell the Last of Us story from the video game, I would suggest, without just inviting a bunch of criticism about the similarities to The Walking Dead. And
that's
you can't quite tell the Joel story without inviting conversations about Pedro Pascal's performance as the Mandalorian. And given that those are both the case, then you have to get as close to it as you can. And instead, what I've seen in this what I've seen in this adaptation has been an increased focus on what must it be like to, and here's a crass parallel, to be born after 9/11 and never having known what that was like, or born after airplanes could fly or whatever. And I'm really enjoying just seeing the world through Ellie's eyes. And I feel like we're getting more of that here than we got in the video game.
I agree with that. I think I have no problem with Bella's performance as Ellie, because I think Ellie has to be basically a creation of the actor. Like I don't think that's a character that you can try to recapture in a video game, because for a lot of reasons. I think, your casting decision is based around, do I want to watch this person learn and grow and become hard and all the things that this story invites. But Joel is ultimately the spine of the first series, right? And the first game. And so he doesn't have quite as much flexibility about what his arc can be. And the concern I have, especially from this episode, is that it's actually kind of easy for these two to like each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that hard for these two to sort of, in the movie sense, fall in love with each other, right? It seems to come very naturally. That's a problem, I think, for this story.
My friend Justin harps on how it's like, look, we get it. You're gonna, rough exterior, and now you're gonna melt. Like it's a familiar enough trope now that my friend Justin is very frustrated by it. And whereas you're right, it's believable in the game in a way that I don't know that you could make it believable in this moment in an adaptation.
I would argue there's two things that need to happen. I mean, they haven't done it, so they're not gonna. It's gonna be different. There's two things you need to do. The first is there is meaning in murder in Last of Us, the game.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you kill somebody in Last of Us, and you kill a lot of people in Last of Us, it means something. That's part of what makes it great. Like this is the story of a lot of death and murder to get to potentially salvation, right? And removing that from the character, which they've done intentionally several times, means that he hasn't gone further down that road, right? So you've actually reduced the stakes of this guy being able to harden or unharden, right? Like when people say they're exhausted with that trope, I would say, yeah, you're exhausted because it's coming, not because it's being done well. When it's being done well, it still works.
There's only one counter I have to that, and I'll defer to Tom on his impression of it. I know the rule in storytelling in a visual medium is show, don't tell, but It was a very powerful moment for me when Ellie asks, have you ever killed an innocent person?
Right.
And he just refuses to answer the question. And I would rather have that moment than have them showing him killing innocent people or what have you.
Agreed. They got to pick their moments. See, that is an example I would say of showing. They show because he doesn't tell us. You see, other parts of the episode, he does tell us. There's a lot of dialogue that's Joel opening up when he doesn't in the game. And again, I don't care that they match the game. I care that you can show me who this guy is by what he doesn't answer and what he does. That's my contention.
I feel like the perspective I've got on Joel may or may not be helpful, but is interesting given the conversation you two game players are having here. I look at Joel as, okay, we know he's a great guy. We're not going to pretend he's not a great guy. That's what they showed us in episode 1. He's an awesome father, and he had a horrible thing happen when his daughter was killed, and he hasn't recovered from that. Okay, he's got a hardened exterior. That's believable. They didn't have to show us that. They showed us his daughter dying and the world is falling apart. I buy that. What I have been expecting, and it sounds like this is definitely not what they do in the game, but what I have been expecting is we would slowly soften the relationship, which they absolutely did in this last episode, where she's making the puns and he's laughing, and it's like, okay, he's letting himself risk attachment again, and we're going to ruin that. Whether it's in Kansas City and fighting these people, he is going to fear that she is dead or been killed or something, and harden right back up because it reopens old wounds, or she is going to see him do things that he didn't want her to see and hid from her in this last episode, and that's going to change her opinion and distance her, and we're going to get this roller coaster effect of them, starting to like each other more and then having it ripped apart over the course of the season. At least that's what I was expecting given what they showed me so far.
Bryce, in a desperate bid to not give anything away to Tom, what did you think of this episode?
I liked it. I thought this was a really dense episode. just we cover a lot of ground. I was kind of I was a little off step last week, wondering where that episode fit into the story that we're telling, and I don't feel like we got a lot of resolution on that like I would have wanted. But I do appreciate that they really give us a whole story and a half on this one, including setting up the other faction,
the 33rd floor encounter, and
like I think they do a good job of having to yada 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 a lot of parts of the country on such a big journey like this. So I think it's good. I liked seeing the new stuff, the new Fedra. I like seeing that new stuff. I thought that they were compelling characters and an interesting way to bring more drama to that story instead of just faceless bad guys.
Did any of you three miss the fact that I believe this is the first episode where we've not looked back in the descending times? It's all been kind of in the current moment.
I noticed it, but didn't mind it at all. It didn't feel like a wrong move or anything.
I know we're getting a few stories in the upcoming episodes that are worth waiting for. Like I've seen some clips that I'm like, oh yeah, that's going to be great. Can I just say one thing about what Tom said that Tom actually proved my point, which is his belief about Joel is that Joel is a great guy. That's the status quo. That is not who Joel was in the video game.
Yeah.
Like Joel was not a great guy in the video game. Joel was always prepared to be hard. And this thing sent him over the edge of that.
Even before the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
Yes, I'll give you two factoids because it doesn't spoil the story for you. In the video game, you can pick up a card that his daughter wrote for him. And it's this like very teenager card that describes like, well, let's see, you hate everything I do, you hate my music, you're always all over my case, and yet you're still Dad of the Year. How do you do that, right? That's like one of two pieces of information we get about him. And the other one is he refuses to help anybody when they're driving through the pandemic, basically, which they did in the
we do get to see it in the adaptation, but not as often as we do in the video game. Like it's very clear that he's out for his and his.
Yep,
gotcha.
He's a hard guy, and like he's had a hard life. He works late. He doesn't make a lot of money. He's tired. He doesn't have time for his daughter. Really, it's a different setup, and I think it's probably because they were concerned that he might not be that likable if they showed him the way that he is in the video game. And that's a real problem, but your beliefs about him tell me, this is a different Joel than what the video game is doing.
Anything else?
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Last of Us 104?
No, I mean, at this point, I am, if I could, I would David Blaine style sew my mouth shut so that I don't.
I'm trying not to say anything.
All right.
No, I don't think it's bad, by the way. I just like, as a purist who loves what the story was, I worry that the TV show will not be as effective. That's
Adam, I do have one more question for you. When I first invited you on the show, I think we had only seen the first episode. And
correct.
Have you softened on your skepticism? Has it gotten better for you since then?
I think it's going to be a pretty good show. I like it. I like the show. My skepticism is just wanting it to have the same resonance that the game had, and not the same experience, but the same level of resonance. And I worry that we might not get that without the Ludo narrative piece of actually killing all those people that sort of bond you together, like the trauma bonding of it.
What this is, and we can wrap up on this. My same friend Justin Robert Young that I was talking about earlier, we had a debate about whether you should read the book and then watch the movie, or watch the movie and read the book. Conventional wisdom says the book's always better, so start with that. But the answer, as we came to, and I firmly believe, is no. Watch Jurassic Park the movie first. Fall in love with it, and then get the superior experience of Jurassic Park, the book, right? So likewise, let's let this be an 8-chapter pale imitation of the 40 to 60 hour experience of playing the video game that is infinitely superior. So being at peace with the book's always going to be better than the movie, always start with the movie. And so in that regard, I'm only cheering for this.
Same. I'm happy for everybody who doesn't play video games, doesn't want to play video games, that they get to have this story. Like, that makes me genuinely happy, because for video game, it's one of the greatest moments in video game history for narrative.
Yeah.
You know, and but if you do like video games and just haven't tried it, I would encourage you, if you want to spend money on any video game, Last of Us is worth your time.
Agreed.
Absolutely worth your time.
Fantastic. Adam, thank you so much for hanging out a little extra and talking with us about this. This was really fun.
You bet. Hey, guys, so great to be on. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Real quick, plugs. One-upsmanship.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Please, if you like this discussion about video games, I do this all the time on my podcast, One-Upsmanship, with my friend Michael Swaim. It's available wherever you like podcasts. We are struggling to find the 100 best games that we will preserve from all humanity and send into space for the aliens to find one day when we are no more. So if you'd like to see what's on the list and find out what we add, check out our podcast.
And by the way, they take it very seriously.
Yes, we do. We are very serious about that list.
Thank you so much, Adam.
You bet, man. Thanks a lot, guys.
Fantastic. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
That is The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 4. Brian, turnabout is fair play now as we talk about 25-21, episodes 12 and 13 of Season 1. You watched these episodes. Bryce, did you watch these episodes?
I'm sorry, I forgot to do that part of my homework. And Tom, you even like went out of your way to like give us skip notes, and this is a doubler. This is a double episode because we're pretty much. I mean, well, we'll get. I guess you guys will get to it when we talk about the show that you watched. I didn't watch it.
Tom has the main thrust of the show, and we've all agreed that this is a show that takes its time, and Tom has given us opportunities that we're allowed to skip. Tom, can I confess something?
Yes.
I did virtually no skipping. I was really sorry in the first of the two episodes.
In episode 12. Yeah, I could believe that. Oh, that's great. That's good to hear.
Yeah, episode 12 might be my favorite so far. It's the first time that it doesn't feel like a story just about a triangle. I'm glad that we have our two fencing all-stars who go for it. I was into the idea that because this is set in the 1990s and culturally there are differences in Korea versus America, by the 1990s, corporal punishment, teachers hitting kids was all the way out in the United States, but you could tell that this was a time that it was fading. And I don't know how many of the sections of those you said I was free to skip, but it was, I was so taken by that story, and I was so taken by the stand of the, first in class kid saying, you know what, I'm gonna leave. And then the mom saying, are you sure? This is really a big deal that you're doing. And then that mom hardening her stance and coming in and just being all like, what a piece of crap school. Just brutal. And we also get, oh goodness, what's our male 25-year-old lead?
Becky Jean.
Becky Jean. I enjoyed his moment of having learned his lesson of knowing his story before he gets on the camera, and him writing everything down like, haha, not today, Satan. I'm going to write everything analog in a book. It's not like that's how you going to get me that way. Bryce, do you want to know how they got him?
How'd they get him?
It rained.
Oh, no!
And so he was live on a remote thing on a beat that he wasn't familiar with. And he gets to the moment that he can't read his notes. And he's like, because it's baseball, he's like, and then the story he tells is effing bonkers. He's
is it
like,
real? Like, does he make something up, or does he tell?
No.
He tells the actual
it's an actual story.
happened.
So, imagine him saying, the Jets and the Sharks were snapping and fighting and doing their dances, and then somebody got upset and threw a bat into the crowd, and then he can't read the notes, and it's like, what? And then he just snaps, and he just gets in the zone and says, at that point, the audience started throwing eggs at him, and a full-on riot emerged. And I thought, is he making all of this up? And he's like, but by the end, it was determined by this at a 4.5-hour game, 12 innings, and gets all of the details and facts exactly right.
Aww.
And they're all like, and afterwards, during the rain, the production crew's like, hey, what was with that pause? And it's like, oh, yeah, look. And they're like, did you use water-based ink?
Yeah, they didn't go, oh, that sucks. They're like, you used water-based ink in the rain?
What?
You fool.
Yeah. Don't you know? But then they're all like, wait, so that means you got all those facts and figures from memory? Oh, you're the best. High five, high five.
It sounds like it would be good to watch, but it
was
sounds
great.
so corny.
It was great.
Yeah, I mean, I think episode 12 was really good. And I actually had a harder time finding skips on this one because of that. I often will advise you to skip past some of the Ji-woong Koyurim story, because that story is just a side story. It will have some bearing on something that Koyurim is going to do, but it's not something you can't gather from knowing that Ji-woong and her into each other. But I didn't want to skip Songwon jumping in defense of Ji-woong, because that bit where she uses the fact that she's favored and that there is no corporal punishment because she's, tops in the school, and her mom's sticking up for her. Her mom sticks up for her. That's an amazing scene.
Yeah, I feel like in the true spirit of Spoilerin time, we'll do a little Westworlding. So valedictorian girl gets busted for standing up for a DJ guy. He gets his face slapped around, starts bleeding. She calls out the dean in front of him, makes a scene, and
she calls the police.
Calls the police. Like, what are you gonna do? Call the police? And she pulls out her phone and be like, 0000 beep, and then calls the cops. And they come up and they're like, well, yeah, it's not allowed, but it's also not a crime. So I don't know what leverage you think you have here. So it seems like,
they're like, we had to respond and investigate, but the punishment for this is the principal looks into it. So there's nothing else we can do other than tell the principal, hey, this lady called and said this happened.
And then there's a brief moment where a rival network, two guys are.
It's not even a rival. Is it a rival? It might be a rival.
Yeah, network. It was a different
network. A reporter on a different beat.
Right. I got the impression that it was the equivalent of, like, he's working for CBS and the other guy is like Fox News looking for a sensational
it's a crime
angle.
Reporter, whereas Becky Jin is a sports reporter he happens to be at the police station looking into allegations of drug testing or arrest for a sports athlete. Here's this crime reporter who's on, I guess, the education beat or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and what he wants to do is he wants to get an interview with the kid who reported the corporal punishment, but it's very clear that his piece is going to be, kids today, what's up with them not wanting to be hit by their headmasters? And Becky Jin, I hope I got that right. Like, there's this moment he's about to get the interview, and all of a sudden he snatches away the card, and he's like, I know what your story is. This ain't it. I know these kids. I know the school. You go sniff somewhere else.
And he talks to Sungwon. He tells her, like, you don't want to do that. Yeah.
And
let me explain why.
We get to a place where we have a more actualized Hito, and eventually the episode, there's a pregnant moment where they are having New Year's Eve in the year 2000, talking about the possibility, like, oh my God, do you think nukes are going to go off? Is this the end of the world? Well, if it is, I want to go to my family. Everyone leaves, and there's only our budding romancers, and they have a kiss, and then cut to Tom says, skip all of the next episode and just watch the last 7 minutes of the next episode, which I understand why, because it's just well, I don't know, I just, and feelings and this, that, and then it ends with the same kiss again.
Yeah. The episode 13 is a lot of like, well, I don't know that kiss meant what you thought it meant, but maybe it did and maybe it didn't. And then Hito getting along because she's grown up now, getting along with the guys who are fencers and kind of being a little flirty, and Yujin says this and it gets upset, and there's just back and forth, all to end at first snowfall, which I think I've explained in these dramas. First snowfall is particularly romantic in Korean dramas. You always want to, get your first kiss or your first date during the first snowfall. And the snowfall comes and Hito is there. So yeah, that's it kind of ends after a long winding road of should we kiss? did we kiss? Did we mean the kiss? Kiss again. The only things that are in this episode 13 that are worth noting are that the coach went to Hito's mom to talk about scholarships for college and pick one. So you know that's in the cards. She's going to go to college. Yurim, on the other hand, isn't sure she can afford college. And there's a scene where she's at home with her dad and she records her dad singing, and it's very sentimental, but it doesn't look like Yurim's going to go to college, and we don't know what she's going to do. And then the coach at the high school, having now been play-by-play announcer, kind of rehabilitated herself on the national stage, tells Yijin that she's coming back as national coach. She's going to be on the national team, which conveniently means she gets to be in scenes with Hito and Yurim, obviously, because they're national team.
Speaking of which, there was a third place kid on the fencing team who said this is the B plot of 12. The B plot of 12 was a kid is just.
This was the kid in 11 who was standing in the middle of the road.
She ran out of the gate.
Right.
So she tells the coach, I want to quit fencing. I want to focus on other things. And she's like, no, you can't. And she's like, what? And finally
the team sticks up for her and says, well, we're not going to keep practicing until you let her quit.
And then so the coach relents and says, tell you what, if you make the quarterfinals, then you can quit. And so the whole team rallies around, they train up, and she makes the quarterfinals. And of course, you think, what a clever trap, because she's going to see that she could do it and she's going to want to go. But instead, she was like, well, now that you know that you could do it, you want to keep going, right? And she's like, nope, I think I'm going to try baking. And then she just leaves the school. It was actually refreshing. So the success that we saw was two people at the top of their game quitting. We have the valedictorian who quit at the school, and the fencing third placer who quit.
Yeah, and what I love about that is one of the things I love about the storytelling in the series is you think, oh, this is going to get her to think like, oh, I guess I can do it. I'm going to stick around. And the kid is self-aware enough to be like, yeah, no, I'm really glad you made me see that I can do things I don't think I can. Still don't like fencing, but I'll remember that lesson when I become a baker and reach the hard times.
And she says, I think I've had all the fencing I need for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Which I think is great, because it's like the coach still taught her a valuable lesson. Like, you can do things, even if you don't want to do them, you can achieve things. But also the Yeji is like, yeah, great, I don't want to do those anymore. So I'm going to go apply that to something I do want to do. I really did like that. The other thing you get that I told you to skip in 13 is a little bit of the backstory on Coach and Hito's mom. It's not anything you wouldn't guess. Basically, mom gets this report that the coach was cheating, warned her that the story was coming, but didn't apologize about reporting it. And it turns out you get a little bit of explanation that the coach didn't realize it was a bribe. She basically had a member of her team's dad offered to sell her a car at a good price, and she needed a car, so she bought it. And then that guy got mad that his daughter didn't make the final team somehow, and reported her for taking a bribe because she took a discount from him.
Oh, that's interesting. So it was like a soft grift that she didn't realize.
Yeah. And so you don't feel like, oh, the coach has some sordid thing. But also you understand why she's upset at the mom who reported it as if it was a bribe, because that was the story. And so there's a little bit of that. I don't know that you really need to have seen all of that to understand where we're going here. But yeah, coach talks scholarships with mom. Coach
anyway, Bryce, here's what you missed over an hour and a half. They kissed. And then they kissed again.
Well, you should watch 12. Though.
Yeah, I'm gonna
catch
it. I'm gonna rewatch it. I'm gonna watch it. Yeah.
But 13, yeah.
So does it seem like how close? I know that there's talk about like going to college. How far into the school year do we get a sense? I guess if the snow is falling, it's winter.
Because we had New Year's Day.
Yeah, and we know she's 20 years old now.
Okay, so that's interesting. Korea goes by international age, this confused the heck out of me the first time I watched this. Korea goes by international age now, as of this year. In fact, I actually don't think it goes into effect until June. But up until this year, they had their own system of age that did two things. One is you are 1 year old the day you're born.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, you turn into the next year on January 1st.
I was wondering, like, did they not tell us that her birthday was New Year's Day or something? Because there was a line where it's like, I ended this somebody who hadn't kissed him at 19, and by 20, 20s. I was kissing him or something.
So she's actually 18.
Okay.
But she was 19 by Korean age, and then because everybody's age ticks over on January 1st in the old system, she became 20, even though she's still 18.
Okay. It's one of those cultural things where you don't need a whole they know. They've already fixed it.
As long as we're not doing the Game of Thrones, like, as soon as she has her moon's blood.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing like that here. So that is 25-21 season 1, only season, episodes 12 and 13, which means the next one will be 14, which means we'll be able to finish on time before Succession comes back. All right, let's finish off by talking about All Quiet on the Western Front, the Oscar-nominated movie about World War I, loosely based on the novel of the same name.
Yeah, this sent me down a rabbit hole because I think I had mentioned that I had seen it in high school.
It was made into an Oscar-nominated movie in the 30s, and it was made into a miniseries or a TV movie or something in the 80s, right?
Yeah, I thought I had seen the old one, but the old one was in the 1930s, and I didn't know that. So now part of me wants to go see that. I'm gonna be open and confess that high school Brian enjoyed the TV movie with Ernest Borgnine. Mm-hmm. High school Brian had at some point figured, since these are the main characters, they must be the pretty good guys. So I always thought that it was the people on the
the Germans were the good guy. You know what? I'll tell you what. I spent the first I had to stop at about 10 minutes in just to be sure. Like, where these Germans, right? Okay, just checking.
Like, there was a brief moment when I was watching it that I thought, oh, is this like a different portrayal of where the Germans are? Oh.
Well, and don't forget, World War I Germany, very different than World War II Germany in many ways. And in fact, World War II Germany arises because of the ending that they show in this version of All Quiet on the Western Front.
They full on hint at that. There, it's like, you do realize if you do these harsh terms that there will be resentment. And spoiler, there was.
Yeah, which the original book doesn't mention because it was written before World War II. So, I mean, it does mention it, but it doesn't mention it with the same weight and knowledge that they were able to show in the movie, I think.
I ended up going back and reading the summaries on Wikipedia of the book, and the book has a lot of stuff that we don't see here. Yeah. And I think it's fine that we don't, because this is a movie that's a meditation on a visual meditation on the visceral horrors and the futility of war in general, but specifically the Great War, World War I. It reminded me so much of, Tom, I don't know if you happen to listen to it, but Dan Carlin's Hardcore History spends 6-7 hours describing in visceral detail so many of the scenes that we see about how people would have PTSD. As a matter of fact, the pilot episode of Peaky Blinders has somebody who's come back from the Great War, and he thinks he's about to be shot in the back of the head, and his last dying request is, just don't bury me in the mud. And they do a fantastic job of portraying that horrifying reality of being in no man's land, trapped in one of those pits of diseased water, of knowing that if you drink this water, you're going to die, because it's riddled with corpses, but being so thirsty that people would do it anyway. That hiding behind dead horses, the creative arrangement that they have, where in the beginning we have kids who see war, and war is being a foot soldier and having one carbine rifle. And then they almost like a video game. You know, the first time we see a tank, somebody literally says, "What is that?" And then we have the unveiling of the horrifying imagery of just flamethrowers everywhere, and you know, we it's explained what gas is, and it's this was a hell of a way to start my Monday morning, Tom. It was powerful, but before I turn it over to you, I will thank you for encouraging me to listen to the dubbed version because it's quite good. So much of the dialogue takes place off camera. I only maybe 7-8 times during the entire movie noticed that the lips weren't exactly matching what they said.
Yeah, and they did a really good job dubbing even then. Like you say, there's only a few times you even notice. They also had really good actors doing the voices for those, so that you never feel like, oh, I'm getting some dub guy saying the lines. Like they are well acted lines. I started in German, got maybe 5 minutes into it, and realized, oh wait, Netflix does dubs. I bet this sounds great dubbed, and I was glad I was glad I gambled and did that. It does do the thing where they're all British accents, which they always do they always have the Germans being with British accents.
I am totally okay with that. That goes for World War I Germans, World War II Nazi Germans, space World War III space Nazis in the Empire.
Yeah, it's and they do an interesting thing of not translating the other folks. Like they meet the French on a train for negotiations, and the French speak French, and it has to be translated to it. So they paid attention. They did a really good job of that. And yeah, I don't know if you're like, I don't know how many of you even would be, but if you're a fan of the book, I could see you saying, oh, I wish they had showed him being on leave, going back home. That was a powerful scene, or, oh, they changed this character and that was meaningful to me in the book. But I don't think they were trying to make the book into a movie. I think they were trying to use the book as a way to show the horrors of war, because that's really what the book's main purpose was as well.
Yeah, I only found out about the scenes about him going home and being with his dying mother from the Wikipedia summary of it. I never read the original book. But to me, the question was it 1917 or 1918 was the movie from a couple years ago?
1917.
Okay, that appeared to be all one shot.
Right.
If you want to hold the two up side by side, first of all, both are great.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little bit kind of relieved to not be chasing, if I say a gimmick, it sounds reductive. I lost myself in the story here more than I did with 1917, because 1917, once I realized it was all one shot, I was very dialed into how they were doing that. But I never had that during this.
I almost feel like these are good companion movies, and that I would recommend watching All Quiet first, so that you get the lay of the land. This is what World War I was like. And then you watch 1917 as sort of a closer inspection of, if you want to follow one character through the trenches, here's a chance to do that.
And on top of that, I think it's good to see it from the German perspective, where all of the country's youth were being thrown thoughtlessly into a meat grinder. Just a brutal.
Yeah. And 1917 is the same story from the other side of the trench, right?
Yeah. Well, and as I appreciated, much like Chernobyl, you watch it and you think, Chernobyl, that's a good drama. And then at the end, you see the slideshow of all the very real humans and stuff.
Yeah.
They take a little time at the end of this to give you some factoids about the 7 million people who died over or 17 million. It was some absurd.
17 million. Oh, and tens of meters of progress one way or another over the entire. Yeah, in that area anyway.
It was it brought the grim, horrific reality of that to life, and in a very, I hope this wins. What's it up for? Best picture?
Yeah.
You know what? I hope it comes in second to Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I feel like this is an important movie, partly because it is from the German perspective, and so it kind of upends the typical assumptions, again, because it's World War I, and you've got a whole different situation going on between the different European powers at the time. But yeah, I think it does a great job of just showing the futility of war, and yet how it is thought to be rational to pursue, even by those who sign up for it at the beginning before they experience it.
Well, and that very last beat, when it's like you really think you're past all of this and armistice is here, and then you remember, oh, we've seen this one character who worships at the altar of the honor of war, and he plays his one card, which is, well, screw it, we got 15 whole minutes, let's tear stuff up. Bryce, what did you know going into this, and how did it strike you?
I didn't really know anything about this going into it. I thought this is great. I think, especially, in the anti-war themes, like it's all over. It does a very great job of that. I mean, it's very arresting. Like, it does a good job of showing you brutality of war, and in contrast to the officers and the delegates and all of the people who aren't on the front line, the poshness of their nice little grandfather clock, and
the
they're taking
extravagance.
Feasting on food, while these boys basically are eating, like you mentioned, dirty water and mud.
One thing I love about that point in particular is that I don't feel this movie is preachy, because when they show the officers or the generals, they don't make a show of it. The way they frame and the way they film doesn't emphasize the luxury. It just presents it to you like, this is the room they were in, and these are the things they were eating, and yet it still hits.
It sets you in the year more, right? If we were only on the battlefield, who knows when this is? You kind of need the flag of this. They're traveling by train and cuckoo clocks and all of this stuff. Like it's that's really fantastic. I have like two gripes with this movie. One is it's exhausting. It's debilitating. It is. I
agree 100%.
So,
I thought we were rounding the corner, and then I moved the mouse and realized we were barely halfway. And I was like,
it's a
what?
Slog.
Yeah.
I mean,
I suspect that's kind of
to
the
the
point.
subject matter, which is trying to show, like, you think it's a slog sitting in your comfortable room watching this. Imagine what these guys went through. Like, I totally get that, but it's not an easy watch in that respect.
And I will say this is more of a nitpick than anything, but because it is up for all this hardware and stuff, I think some of the CG fire is not very good looking in the movie.
CG fire during date, I actually had the same thought.
I know it's difficult to do, but it does not look best picture good, especially when the flamethrower guys come out. Right in that scene, it looks really bad, I think.
It's not up for best effects.
I actually thought that, I was like, wow, I've never seen good daylight fire. This is maybe the best, because it almost looks like real daylight fire.
Maybe. I don't know.
So I actually approached it from the opposite side.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it's great. You see a really well-rounded, it seems like a really, really well-rounded profile of not just our main character, but also his comrades. It's especially over such a long period of time, right? We're following about 18 to 20 months in this film, and it doesn't feel like you need day one, and then we time skip right away, because that you don't need more.
I think if I had a gripe, it's a very small one. When we switch from the trenches to them guarding the train station, I could have used a line or two to explain, lucky that we got reassigned to guarding this train station. Sure, I'm glad to be out of the trenches, because I was very confused how they got there and why suddenly they got this plum assignment. it didn't ruin it. I figured it out. Like, oh, they got reassigned at a plum assignment. I guess it doesn't really matter why, but it was a little jarring for me.
I think in the made-for-TV movie with Ernest Borgnine, it was made clear to me as a high schooler that humans can only handle so much of that. And so you rotate them out and you get them to do other things for a bit and then you send them back. And so because I was already primed for it.
Thieves who steal goose and eggs and
which is sometimes an adorable hijinks and sometimes a tragic way to eat one last omelet.
It'll be the death of you.
Not even an omelet. They didn't cook it.
Right. Sorry.
Uncooked
raw egg.
Basically a protein shake.
Here's a weird thing. The best scene in this entire movie, one thing I really like is when I am challenged as a viewer to understand what is happening and why it's normal. One of those things are, I just saw a picture that you showed briefly, Bryce, of them, on assignment to find the missing battalion of people who it turns out they were gassed and took off their masks too early.
Yeah.
But my favorite scene might be the two of them dropping trowel and pooping in a latrine, and without explanation, one of them reads the letter from his wife to the other, and you're like, what is happening? And you're like, oh, he's illiterate, and they come from different areas, and it's
which they hammer home later in a good way. Right. I can't. We're not going to be friends. I'm illiterate. You're going to go to college, and actually, you're both going to die. But What a strange moment where the guy who pushes to sign the armistice is clearly motivated by just looking at the meat grinder, and it's like whatever it takes to stop this, but. You could, that moment of hesitation and regret when he's like, what you're doing is just going to, I suspect, spark something worse. It did.
Spoiler. Yeah. Anything else on the movie?
No, I'm really glad we watched it. It's good. It's very, very good.
It is deserving of the nomination for sure.
Last thing with the ending of following kind of the new recruit as he picks up dog tags again. I thought it was an interesting choice to make him look a lot like Franz.
Oh, yeah. Although I thought they wanted to make him clearly not German. He's an American kid.
A blonde kid?
Yeah.
No, he's German.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Why would he be picking up German dog tags and fighting for the Germans if he was American?
Fight for the Germans.
Oh, no. At the end, he doesn't pick out the dog tag from the German guy, our main character.
He's followed him in from the German camp.
Well, then why didn't he take his dog tag? Why did he just steal his neckerchief?
Because it was a softness. It was a comfort. It didn't even matter.
Right, but his literal assignment was to pick up dog tags.
I wasn't sure why he didn't pick up his
to win the war,
tag.
and they didn't do that either.
Yeah.
No. I thought that we were seeing. I thought we were seeing the Allies.
He was definitely German. I understand your confusion though, because I was like, oh, he's taking off the scarf because he is the next. He's taking up the mantle, right? He is the next in that chain of hopeless
and we see
cases.
him. We see him when the big general is giving his last, like, hey, we're gonna do one last thing.
He's in the yard.
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh, you're right. You know what? I'm gonna say that's a side effect of me watching the dubbed version with subtitles. Is part of me, I would have no confusion if I was watching it just dubbed, because I would know that. But I took it to be a mirror image of the Allies had that trench, because it's the same. The trench he dies in is the one they do their last hurrah, and they, I assumed failed to take. And I figured it was the Americans now doing the exact same thing that the Germans did at the beginning.
Well, I mean, once the ceasefire's done, war's over. And so, I mean, I think you do see Germans and French in that same bunker.
Which is why I took the cue from the fact that he was picking up all the dog tags except for the one guy who I knew for sure was German. So
still don't know why he didn't pick up his dog tag. That part is not clear to me.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's why it won't get an Oscar. That's All Quiet on the Western Front.
Continuity mistake.
From Netflix. Next week, The Last of Us episode 5, 25-21, episode 14, and we're back to one more week of watching Miami Vice before we start getting The Mandalorian and Picard and Succession coming up in a few weeks. So again, Last of Us episode 5, 25-21, episode 14, and Miami Vice season 4, episode 4, The Big Thaw. You can get these and all the episodes from Spoilerin Time broken down easy to consume and early if you're a patron at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.